Welcome to the Hard Truth Podcast. This is Jeremy Fouts, and today's episode will actually be the last one I actually put out before Thanksgiving. So I want to say happy Thanksgiving. If you are following me on social media, tag me in your Thanksgiving dinner plate. I'm definitely going to eat a good one as well. I'm going to have to work out twice on Thanksgiving Day. Guys, today's podcast, I'm going to be talking about why so many athletes have identity problems. And the reason I do this podcast, or wanted to do this podcast, excuse me, I've had a lot of relationships over the last, 20 years of guys that played ball for a long time. And they get to a point in their life where baseball is done, or football, or basketball, and they struggle with their identity. And I actually see a lot of them not knowing what to do. And I see this over and over and over. And I just want to kind of talk to you about some things today that hopefully will help you as a parent, that I've tried to pay attention to, that I hope I've done a really good job with both of my boys. Pearson obviously loves to hunt, loves to fish. Beckett loves to fish. Pearson also took on welding. He's got all of his welding certificates. Beckett loves art. Pearson used to love the trumpet. Both of them play the piano. So I think it's really important. Yes, you know how much I believe in athletics. I am not going backwards on that statement. But I think it's very important for us as parents to make sure that their identity is not tied to only their sport. That is not who they are. So I want to talk to you about this on this podcast, that hopefully we can make sure we make the right decisions as parents, helping coach these athletes, that yes, we want you to succeed. But when it comes to a day that your athletic career is over, and it will happen to all of us, your identity is not tied to a sport. So let's get started with the podcast.
Let's go. What up?
Athletes today are struggling with identity more than any other generation before. And it's not because they're weak, it's because the culture around them is louder and heavier and more demanding than ever. So, why is that? It's social media, it's the recruiting pressure, it's the comparison, it's parental pressure, it's internal expectations, and fear of failure, fear of disappointing people. See, kids are terrified of trying to disappoint mom or dad, and they're carrying all of this at a young age now. So, my message today is this is not a kid problem, this is a culture problem. And I want to share with you some tips and some things that we make sure as a parent we're doing everything right. Let's talk about the core issues. Their identity gets tied to their performance. See, many young athletes believe that they're only valuable as their last stat line. If they go 3 for 3, they feel worthy. If they go 0 for 3, they feel like a failure. If they hit a PR in the weight room, they feel confident. If they miss a rep, they question everything. Why is this? It's again because when your identity is based on outcomes, you are always one bad game away from a mental crisis. And parents, you know what I'm talking about. And I talk about this often. The car rides on the way home when Pearson or Beckett has a bad performance. We maybe talk about it a little bit, but then the subject, I try to switch it to something else. And that's very important for you to understand. I'm going to get into that a little bit more. So, how parents can unintentionally create this pressure. Let's talk about it. Parents don't mean to do this. I mean, we know, guys, I'm a parent. There's no amount of measurement that can put on the love for our kids. We would not intentionally do this at all. But here's how it happens. We get to talking about sports nonstop at home. We're breaking down every game in the car ride. We're only celebrating those great performances. and getting quiet or irritated after bad ones. I mean, I don't like to see my son fail. I don't. I mean, it definitely bothers me if he's up at the plate and we have a chance to win the game and he don't win it. But you know what? He did not win that game, not on purpose. I don't like that feeling and I hate it for him. But parents, we can't make that be an uncomfortable car ride on the way home. Posting the highlights and never celebrating the character. One of the things that I made it a point to do last year is Pearson in his welding class made a very good duck blind with his buddies. And I made sure I posted that because that was tied to his character, something he loves outside of sports, something that was very important for him to do, to learn a trade with his hands, to build something with his buddies, to enter this contest to see if they won. I think they ended up getting second place. It was through the ag program. But making sure that you are celebrating not just the $2 ring on the weekends, but celebrating who your son or daughter is and their character. These small things teach kids this message. Your value comes from what you produce, not who you are. That's what happens. Your message here, not parents, needs to be this: be aware of the environment that you create of only celebrating the highlights through sports and not the character of your athlete as an individual. So, how social media destroys identity. And you guys know I've got a large social media following, and it can definitely be a tool, and that's what I try to use that as a tool to educate people on sports nutrition, how to eat correctly, all of these different things. But here's what happens: kids are not comparing themselves to their teammates. They're comparing themselves to the best moments of thousands of other athletes. See, a 14-year-old compares himself to a kid who's 3 years older, 2 inches bigger, and lifting numbers he cannot physically hit yet. And what happens is when this happens, their comparison kills their identity. It turns kids into judges of themselves rather than builders of themselves. So I'm not telling you that you can't have your kid on social media. That's your call. But I would encourage you to make sure you know the main consistent feed on your athlete if he's younger, and make sure you talk to him about that. Yes, that's awesome that kid did that, but this kid is 3 years older than you. He's 2 inches taller. He's 50 pounds heavier. And make sure we do a good job as parents grounding them and talking to them about what they're putting in their mind continuously. How early success can damage identity. Let's talk about that. The early bloomer often gets hit the hardest. Everyone praises him. Everyone expects more. Everyone assumes they will be the next big thing. Then the other kids catch up physically, and suddenly the early bloomer feels lost. And I'm telling you, I've got two situations in my house, and this is what's happened. Pearson was a late bloomer, my oldest. Beckett was an early bloomer. And I've always just tried to encourage Beckett. Hey, Beckett, I know you're a phenomenal athlete, but you got to continue working harder. This is not going to be one of those things that's always going to be easy for you. But here's the thing: your identity is not tied to you becoming the next Bo Jackson. You've got art, you've got fishing, you've got other things that you love to do. We're going to continue to work hard, but this is not who you always have to be. This is not always going to become this easy. And so I just point that out. Now I've got a late bloomer. That's a different conversation. Pearson, I'm like, you got to work harder, man. Just keep working harder. But here's the good thing, Pearson. When everything starts clicking, I was talking to a dad yesterday, and he's got a son that he's a late bloomer. And he should be a freshman, but he's a sophomore. He's very young for his class. The dad's 6'5", and the son is still just 5'8", and the son is working his tail off. He is following my meal plan to a T. He's sending me weekly numbers of his weights. He's went from like 140 to 165. He's working hard. And I did some research for him last night, and I was talking to him. His son don't have a real good 60 time yet. And so I pulled up Pearson's 60 time at his same age, and it was like a 8.2. And now he's running a six, right at a 6.5. Right at between 6.5 and a 6.660. And I told him also this fact that 90% of your Hall of Famers are late bloomers. So I don't care where your athlete is, but do a good observation and have these conversations with them, and don't let their identity be behind just sports. If they're early bloomer, let them know when it comes to time when you're not always the best at everything you do, that's okay. We're going to keep working through this, keep honing on our craft. If you're a late bloomer, that don't mean that you're not ever going to be in the Hall of Fame. Here's what the stats say, but be conscious of where your athlete stands as an early bloomer or a late bloomer. Why nutrition and identity are connected. You want to know why truly, not just because of the long-term health reasons that I am so passionate about youth and their nutrition. And there's a lot of reasons. And again, the most important is their long term health. I know the healthy habits that they create when they're young is going to create healthy habits when they're older. I know they're going to teach their sons, their daughters, healthy nutrition. I know the good ripple effect of teaching young athletes about nutrition. But here's some other reasons why. This is where you bring your this is where the expertise comes in for me, not only being a sports nutritionist, but having two sons. Underfueled kids lose confidence. The tired kids overthink. Kids who are not recovering well are irritable, emotional, and fragile. Kids in calorie deficits struggle mentally and physically. This is proven, guys. And I'm telling you, a confident athlete that is fueled and has everything he needs in the tank, that person, you cannot build mental strength on an empty tank. That person is going to be more mentally tough, more aware of the situation, more readily available to perform under pressure than a kid that is underfueled. And I know I talk about nutrition a lot, but I'm telling you, parents, dial in your athlete's nutrition. Now, here's why kids under pressure crumble a lot of times. Most athletes don't quit sports because the game gets harder. They quit because the pressure gets heavier than their self worth can support. Kids crumble when they believe disappointing someone means they're less valuable. It's sad, man. The safest place for your athlete to fail should be in your home. And understand that as a parent, we don't like to see our athletes fail, but those failures just really start working on that character. We got to be okay with not going 4 for 4. We got to be okay with not making the last shot in a basketball game. The safest place for your athlete needs to be in your home. Now, how to build identity the right way. Encourage identity of who they are, not what they do. Character, work ethic, humility, leadership, effort, respect, discipline. This respect thing, I'm big on that. Anybody that ever texts or communicates with me, if you thank me for something, I always type in, you are welcome. I've taught my boys since they was young. Look a man, look a woman in the eye, shake their hand, show them respect. Yes, sir, no, sir. We moved to Colorado when the boys was young, and the principal called me and he said, are you in the military? I said, no. He said, I have never, ever heard so many yes, sirs, thank you, sir, no, thank you in my life other than coming from your two kids. And he said, why do you do that? I said, you know what? I've learned at a young age, and I had great parents, that respect and manners will get you a long ways in life. I've told this story over and over of me starting as a sophomore at a school that usually no sophomore started in football, and I started both ways. And the head coach stood up in front of the room. the first day in front of the whole football team that he was going to start me on the first game. He said, the reason I'm going to start Fouts, I know there's two seniors ahead of him, but I'm just going to tell you, every time I'm talking, he's looking me in the eye. Parents, teach your son, your daughter respect and manners. So I'm telling you, it makes a big difference. These are must, guys. More in your home than these must are more important in your home than stats or rankings. Sports are what they do. It is not who they are. So what every athlete needs to learn during this process, you are not the stat line. You're not your last game. You're not your batting average. You're not your early successes. You're not your slump. You are the habits, choices, and character you show daily. That's who you are. You're not a batting average. You're not a 3 point shot percentage. You're not the best swimming time. You're not the best shortstop in softball. You are, who God made you through your character, your effort, your respect, your manners, and that is who you are. So, the parent challenge. I'm going to tell you straight, parents, if your child believes they have to perform to be loved, valued, or praised, they will develop an identity problem. You've got to make sure. I've told Pearson a million times, Pearson, if you don't play baseball ever again in your life, I'm good with it. I love you as a son. I love you for who you are. And I will praise you regardless if you go 0 for 3 or if you go 3 for 3. I will love you if you're a welder on a pipeline or if you're a full-time duck hunting guide. I've told Beckett, if you're an artist or if you're a lacrosse player, I don't care. Your kids have got to know for sure that you're not going to love them from their performance in a sport. You're going to love them for who they are. That's the way we get rid of the identity crisis. So that's my challenge to you, parents. If your child knows they're valued no matter what they do, they will develop confidence, freedom, and grit. So the athlete challenge, talking to a few of the athletes that's listening here, I'm going to talk directly to you. You are more than a sport. Sports reveal who you are, they do not define who you are. If you want to play long term, protect your identity and build it on something deeper than a stat. This is how you play free. This is how you perform at your best. This is how you enjoy the game that you love. In closing, guys, this is something that as I have reminisced over Pearson's career, and last week I talked about his commitment to college. These are things that I've tried to work with him on as a parent. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. Have I made mistakes? 100 of them. And believe it or not, a lot of these mistakes that I've made, that's the reason I speak them to you. That's why I bring you a message like this. There was a time in their early career that I thought that all that mattered was getting to D1, getting to the majors. Oh gosh, bless my heart. Because they're so much more important tied to the person who they are than trying to get them to the pros or to college to play a sport. There's so much more important things, their faith, their love for each other, their love for their family, their love for others, their ability to serve others than just a sport. And in closing here, I'll just say this. If you want long-term success, you must separate who you are from what you do. Great athletes learn to compete with freedom because their identity is not on the line every time when they step on the field. That is where their confidence grows. That is where the resilience is built. That is where kids stay in the game long term. I had Hunter Dozier on a podcast, and Hunter and his wife Amanda are amazing. He played for the Royals. He was the in the first round pick, 8th overall, and he said, "You know what? Some of my greatest moments is when I just had fun." And I listen to that. And young athletes, I'm telling you, the reason these athletes make it to the pros, yes, they grind their butts off. Yes, they pay attention to nutrition. Yes, they work out hard. But the ones that make it 9 times out of 10 are the ones that says, you know what? Baseball, softball, basketball, that's not who I am. That's what I love to do. Learn to love your sport. Learn to have an identity outside of a sport and have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you guys for joining me on the Hard Truth Podcast.
Let's go.